Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Mark Wingfield, my trainer colleague in Havening. Mark and I think we met at the conference in Ireland 2 years ago. Mark, can it
Yeah,
be? Yeah.
it was. Because I sat down and I didn't realize it was you, to be honest, because you changed your hair and and you introduced yourself. And I thought, oh, that's Simona. So
Ah, wonderful. I don't remember that. I remember we had a lovely connection, and
mm,
from that conference, what came? You mentioned that you also would love to train in German, and we
mhm.
kind of got together. And we're not sure if we did an introduction, but we did a training together in
We
German,
did.
and it was lovely to
Yeah,
just co-train. So that's how we got to know each other.
yeah.
And
2 years
now,
ago now,
yes.
amazingly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my idea for this series is as I was in, and I just shared with you, I was in New Zealand, meeting all these beautiful people and also
Mhm.
having these wonderful connections with my trainer colleagues. I thought there's so much beauty, so much knowledge, so much individual story, why people teach, why
Mhm.
people bring this beautiful technique called havening into the world. And that was my idea to connect with my trainer colleagues and just listen to their fascination, listen to what's up for them, why are they doing what they're doing, and also maybe you have something in your training that is kind of you point out or that's really
Mhm.
important to you. So let's take it from here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, shall I explain how I got into havening because it's a slightly
Yeah.
different route from most people's. I have got, as I know you have a background in working in conflict, but I had a leadership and communications background and an interest in martial arts. So again, a form of conflict, and I developed this very niche approach on assertiveness and keeping people at a safe distance and defending yourself if necessary. And when I was doing that work, doing work with organisations, frontline staff who were threatened, abused, I was meeting a lot of traumatized people. And the very experiential nature of the training that I was doing, and I have a prop here to indicate what that would be. So, just for one moment, I'll take on the role of an intimidator. What are you looking at? Eh? What's your problem? Anyway, so that's very mild. That's extremely mild.
My body's already reacting to it because it just changes everything.
Yeah. So the eyes are really important, but it's the whole physical, what you're saying, what you're doing, how you deliver it physically as well as um, what you're saying and how you're expressing it. But the reason I mentioned that is because this experiential training, which is very challenging, but ultimately hugely empowering, you're coached as it happens to help you if there are any difficult moments and to encourage you when you have a challenge. But if you've been traumatized and you've been through something like that previously, you're probably not going to want to come on that course and you won't find it very beneficial because you might feel as though you're going to relive the trauma, which isn't the intention at all.
Mhm, mhm,
So somebody said to me, "Oh, you ought to do havening, right?" Hmm? And that was 2014. And I heard about you don't have to talk about it, whatever your issue is. It's a perfectly natural process. It's very quick. It's very gentle. And I thought that sounds far too good to be true. But I was curious.
mhm,
And I got in touch with somebody who I'd seen being havened live at a demonstration, who I knew. And she told me that it was absolutely brilliant and that I should talk with Tony, who'd done the demonstration. Tony Burgess, very well known within the havening community, lovely guy. And I spoke to Tony and said, if you think it'll work for your business, come along. So I went along to the training. I was blown away from the very first demonstration. I
mhm,
thought, wow, did that really just happen? So yeah, I got into it, and it was only a small part of my business at the time, and I that was 2014, so I certified not too long after, and then was doing my main leadership and communications and assertiveness work, and then lockdown happened in 2020 in the UK, and all of my business died overnight because it was all face to face presentation and demonstration and all that. And I thought, well, what can I do? So I was still doing Havening, continued to do it all the time, but not a huge amount of it. And I thought, well, maybe that is my way out of this. And that's what I did. And then later I was invited to be a trainer. Um, and I'd helped out the training in Paris in 2015 and helped online German training, the very first one in 2021. And I thought, well, I've been doing training since 1987. I ought to do this.
Mm.
So anyway, so that's how I made it my primary focus. I still do other things, but it's my primary focus.
Can I ask you something? You said when you saw Tony working with someone, do you remember what did, because so for those people who don't have an idea, I mean, I have an idea what
Yeah.
happens, but if you maybe give a little bit, just what was it that so much had an impact on you that you said, hey, this is
Mm.
this, you mentioned something that blew me away. So what was it exactly?
Well, it's a really good question. The lady's name is Patty, and Patty is a certified practitioner. She was on the same course as me, but she'd volunteered to be a demonstration volunteer at the very start. And Tony did something called event havening, which you'll be very familiar with, which is basically going back to a particular experience which wasn't very pleasant and has left a lasting emotional residue and probably some more besides. But this lady, keeping it short, her mum had died in tragic circumstances on the operating table in hospital. But what was the particularly distressing part for this individual was that that morning before the operation, this lady was a nurse. She was very used to hospitals, very used to clinical procedures, and she was very short with her mum and said, Mum, you're going to be fine. For goodness sake, I've got to go to work. And those are the last words she had with her mum,
Mm,
who
mhm,
unfortunately passed away later that day.
mhm,
And the guilt that she held
mhm,
for, can't remember exactly what it was, but about 30 years of her last words, the fact that she didn't get to say goodbye to her mum, and it was just an awful, awful experience. And I can't remember exactly how long it took, but it was something like half an hour, 40 minutes as a demonstration. And so Tony did a great job, but I didn't know he had because at the end of the demonstration, there were tears rolling down Patty's cheeks. And I thought, oh, it hasn't worked because she's still upset. That wasn't the case at all because Patty saw the audience sort of, oh, okay, she's crying, hasn't worked. And she said, no, these are tears of joy. I can't believe I'm thinking about my mum and I'm happy doing so. And it was
mhm,
just, ooh, okay. And I went up to Patty afterwards. I said, so what happened there? She went, I don't know. It's really weird, but it's amazing. And I thought,
mhm,
oh, okay, I better sit up and listen to what's going on over the next couple of days then. And it was that for me was astonishing. And I try and replicate that every single time in my training. So I
mhm,
always have a demonstration of event havening when we first start. I bring somebody in from the outside who has nothing to do with the training, so people can just watch it, and hopefully they're blown away like I was.
mhm.
So it starts the course really well, and people are like, "Wow, this is brilliant!" Oh, and they're motivated to really get into the course, and it works.
I mean, just listening to it, it really touches my heart because I know from, and this was for, maybe we say a little bit about what's actually happening during such a process of
Mm.
people. There's something that happened to people which has an impact. Sometimes it is traumatizing. It has an impact. It has an impact on the body, has an impact on the way they look at the world, the way
Mm.
they hold things in, as you said, in this case, feelings of guilt and maybe shame and maybe remorse
Yeah.
and sadness. And very often there's something like, oh, if I only could turn back time and just
Hmm.
do things differently. And it's holding us up through our, as you said, like in this case, 30 years. It's like
Mm.
we're with it. It's there very often present every day. So it's impacting our life. And
Hmm.
what we do with the evening is like we use the touch. In this case, I guess Tony was doing the evening
Yeah, he was
touch.
applying it. Yeah.
He was applying it,
Mm.
doing the havening touch. We can do this in the face, on the arms, or just with our hands. And then what we have this distraction. Some people don't like the term distraction techniques, but it's basically to think of a neutral thing or think of a positive thing while the other person applies the havening touch. And for a few minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, we do this. And the chemistry of the body, of the brain changes. And
Yeah.
it changes in such a profound way that we kind of take the emotion out of the event and we can think about the event in a complete or feel about the event in a completely different way, as you just said.
Yeah.
This thinking of it and feeling, what was her word? She was tears of joy, just really feeling touched that something so much changed. And the beauty is when we work with such an event, it's actually changed forever. The chemistry
Permanent.
has
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I just love that all the time. We get the opportunity. It's a real privilege to sometimes change people's lives or help them change their lives so fast, but in a really gentle way that
Mhm,
allows them to access it without having to talk about things, without feeling as though they're going to be put through the mill.
mhm,
Um, I worked with a veteran, for example, and she was saying her feedback on Havening and the whole experience, and I can't remember the exact words, but she talked about in some other ways that she's sought help, it felt like she's been dragged through a hedge backwards.
mhm,
Whereas with Havening, it was, she said, almost enjoyable.
mhm,
And we did have a bit of fun actually with some of the distractions that we used and some of the methods. I mean, you talked about turning back time. There is, as you well know, outcome havening, for example, where we can't change the past, but we can change our relationship with it.
mhm,
And we can think of the ways that things could have done. And that for some people works so beautifully that it just clears things by itself. And it's, again, and that can be fun. That can be quite
mhm,
surreal sometimes. But some people love that. Some people would, oh, I'm not sure about that, and or they're less imaginative. So you move to other techniques.
mhm.
There's such a palette or a toolbox of techniques to go to. There is always a way to help. That's the
To
lovely thing.
bring ease back into someone's life.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
beautiful. So, is there anything, because you're a trainer, you have your own trainings, and what I just picked up that you take like someone who is not in the training, bring that person in, have a demo with that person.
Hmm.
Hopefully, there is such an impact as you experienced when you watched your first havening session. Is
Hmm.
there anything that you have a sense, well, this is just so gorgeous, or this is something I really like people to take with? Kind of anything you would like to share?
I think the practicality of havening. So yes, of course, I go through and explain the neuroscience in so that it's really understandable, and it can be very complicated, as you know, but try and make it as easy as possible to understand. But the real essence of it is learning how to be competent and confident by the end of the course to be able to go out and try. And
Mhm.
as you certify, you get better and better and better, of course. But there are certain elements that really enhance that, and I try and bring in things like colour as standard, just to train people on innovative ways to move forward and always trying to update. We've just been talking about the recent conference and learning from that. Um, I saw Dr. Ron Rudin, creator of Havening, a couple of years ago. Yeah, it is about 2 years ago actually. Um, and he gave a demonstration in London of talk transpirational havening, and that was just wow. And I'd never seen that demonstrated. So it's refining that delivery and passing that on to students. And I don't know about you, Simona, but the most satisfying thing for me is seeing your students achieving wonderful things. You think, oh, I've helped them be able to do that, which is very fulfilling. But when you see some of the results, I met up, I have a regular meet up with my students and had one earlier this week. And an Australian trainee of mine, she was explaining how she had helped a, somebody who's over 70. They're unfortunately suffering from Alzheimer's. And they're very, very worried about the diagnosis, as you can imagine. And not only was she of the opinion that his memory has been slightly improved, and you have to be careful what you promise with Havening, that's not going to be guaranteed at all. But in his case, maybe because a lot of the fear element was taken away, there's a bit more space for the brain to work more effectively. We can speculate on that. But not only that, and just calming this gentleman down and being able to access the best of his life as he moves forward, he's lost tinnitus, this ringing in his ears.
Wow. Yeah.
And she wondered if it was going to be a temporary loss, and she checked in on him a couple of days later, and it's still gone.
Mm,
And that sort of thing is just mind blowing.
mm,
Um, I'm working with a lady in the United States at the moment who has chronic fatigue syndrome. Again, we have to be careful what we promise, because if it's trauma related, then yes, we can help with Haven. If it's a physical thing, we may well not be able to. But this lady's got a lot of prior trauma, and we're working through that. And the change in her since we started working together is just phenomenal. And other areas, just recently, I've worked with uh, people with other forms of, I mean, Crohn's disease,
mm,
um, all sorts of different sorts of fibromyalgia issues. Um, so, whilst we primarily focus on the emotional element, the body mind connection is absolutely there, and we make such a big difference sometimes also with, oh, that tightness in my throat that I had when I started, that, oh, it's gone, or the pain in my neck, or my stomach doing somersaults, or whatever it is, that's gone too. Oh, okay. And it's just lovely to see all this. But I try and encapsulate that in trainers. It's all about the client, helping the client move forward. How do you do that the best? How do you communicate best with them? How do you practically work with them so it's gentle but effective? And
mm,
when do you stop as well? Because you might be getting towards the end of a session and you might think, okay, I could launch into this, but you don't want to leave your client in a position where they are suffering for the next week before you manage to see them again. So when to park things, when to just do a little bit of growth havening work instead of delving down and ferreting around for the root cause of the issue that the client is suffering from and can be traced back to. So probably a long-winded way of answering your question, but
Well, what I kind of still, it's just lovely. There's something about listening to what's possible. And
mm,
you started off with, when I remember correctly, something about accompanying your practitioners or people who become practitioners
Mm.
and see what's possible also for them to what I call like contribute to the
Yeah.
well-being of other people.
Hmm.
And it reminded me that that's kind of what I take out as the joy. And it reminded me, I've I used to be also a trainer for nonviolent communication, and I was
Hmm.
also used to be an assessor. That means accompanying people to become trainers for nonviolent communication. And after a while, I stopped because, for whatever reason, it was not joyful for me. There was no
Mm.
joy in it. So
Yeah.
I stopped. There's other people who really love to do it. What I find now being a trainer and working with I call them my practitioners, it's it it's just so much joy in accompanying them
Mm.
and giving them tips if I see something. But what's most touching is over time to see how they deepen, how they progress, and how they really learn to be of more service to other people.
Yeah.
And it's also from the stories. And I mean, there's not only the practitioner, but there's also the client kind of, and seeing
Mm.
them in that yeah connection. I just love going through the protocols. I love reading this. I love
Mm.
seeing what's happening. So it's really yeah, it fills my heart with joy. And there's another point I'm also took from what you shared is part of where I get more and more is about being an attuned practitioner,
Yeah.
because this is what I took from the beginning. We're very client centered. We're
Yeah.
very much listening to what it's not about pushing. It's not even, as you just said, like maybe at the end I have an idea of who. That's kind of when I bring myself in, which I think I bring myself in probably a tick too much, because it's not so much about me and wanting to help them, but it's really being attuned to what's there, what's the right technique here,
Mm.
what is it, what is it's that interaction. And that, for me, what I'm very certain is needs it attuned is also about co-regulation.
Uh-huh.
So I'm able to be attuned when I'm in a space, in a space of regulated presence. And then working with a client, it's just, I mean, it's really nurturing also on both sides. A part of
Mm.
that, when we work online, we do the havening for ourselves too. And when we work with a client, we also do the havening on the client. So it's always some kind of an interaction. So yeah, it's
Mm.
lovely.
Yeah, I was just reflecting on some of the most satisfying things I've seen my own trainees do, and or I've experienced myself. And I had a brand new trainee last year who's been doing a lot of work in the prison service,
Mm.
and her first case studies were just brilliant,
Mhm.
just brilliant. I was like, wow. And I'll just give you one where uh, this lady, my trainee, had a meeting with an inmate, so a prisoner in a prison, and he was full of fury and hatred as he walked into the room, really aggravated. And she was like, "Ooh, he looks a bit upset." And he wasn't upset towards this lady, but he was very, very upset over an interaction between him and a prison officer. And he sat down full of hell. And this lady said, "Oh, how you doing?" And he said, "I'm going to kill him." But, okay, right. What do you want to tell me? about what's going on. Don't need to go into the detail of it, but basically there'd been a confrontation, and this guy was actively making a blade to kill this prison officer with, to actually
Mm,
stab them with. It's pretty gruesome stuff. At the end of the session that this lady had with the prisoner, she said, and how do you feel about what you came in with when you were talking about this prison officer? I said, sorry, what do you mean?
mm,
It had just gone.
mm, mm,
She may well have saved this guy's life.
mm,
Certainly saved him from being assaulted as a minimum, because that's what was going to unfurl. So it's not an exaggeration to say this stuff saves lives. Not only changes lives, but saves lives. I've personally got involved with people who were with suicidal ideation, and those people are still around now, and it's just lovely to be able to take out that overwhelming
mm,
distress and or fury or whatever the emotion is, and get people to go and get them to a place where they can manage their issues, whatever they are, and hopefully move on and contribute and do wonderful things.
mm,
And it's just this life changer
mm.
in the
Wow.
hands of a certified practitioner who knows what they're doing. Um, so it's yeah. You talked about joy. This is joyful, absolutely
Mm,
joyful stuff,
mm.
and
Great.
why people should train in havening, because they will feel what we feel. Just oh wow, just help that person, and the just the self fulfillment, and is alone worth it. But the change that you're making is just superlative. So
It is. It is actually, and that, there's one thing about, for me, it's also that part of helping them to help themselves, because of, we always teach the
yeah,
self-havening. So
absolutely. Yeah,
it's one way is to really work through stuff with a client, but also giving them something. I mean, we have it in our hands. It is when I'm able to, also in situations like this, if there is no one there, that I'm able to self-regulate
yeah.
and make it more bearable what's unbearable. So it's really beautiful.
Mm. Personally, over the last year, I've had some challenging things which we don't need to share, but I really benefited because I was training students, and sometimes I would volunteer myself for them to work on me. And I had a particular lady that worked with me, and by sheer coincidence, it happened twice over the period of training that we were doing, and she helped me so much.
Mm.
And I was able to put to one side some personal things that were going on, and it just kept me sane. And it was fantastic, and highly recommended.
Which reminds me, it came before and it comes back again. There's one technique which I really enjoy, that we don't even have to know what people work on. That it's kind of this content free
Hmm.
evening, that we can just invite you. Don't even have to tell me what's going on in your
Yeah,
life. It's good enough that you think about it for a short period of time. Then we start with engaging our working memory, and then we do the havening. And we, as listener, we don't have to know what the other person is working on,
yeah,
and it still works. And that's, I mean, it's just really, really beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
Thank
And
you so much. I know you have trainings coming up. Is there anything you would like to share? And I will also link your contacts under the video. So if people have questions, or if they want to contact you, they find you. And maybe you want to say something about any upcoming trainings.
thank you, Simone. Yeah, I run training on a very regular basis. So we're talking at the end of 2025. So I usually do something each month. They're public courses. But what I'm really looking forward to doing next year is to do more speaking on havening. at conferences and for organisations, and do
Great.
more work with organisations that really want to do proper well-being at work. So yeah, that's
Great.
my plan.
So the link will be found so people can contact you, can have a look into what's going on
Brilliant.
next year. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so much.
Simona.
It
Lovely
was
to
such a
talk.
pleasure. Yeah, it was lovely to talk.